We are up to Reish Pei Vav, Sif Yud Zayin. Now we'll have to see Sif Yud Zayin and Sif Yud Ches together, and I will preface my remarks by saying that there are, once again, 5 or 6 or 7 different pshatim in how to understand Sif Yud Zayin and Sif Yud Ches, and maybe we'll just mention 1 or 2 mahalchim. Sif Yud Zayin says as follows: Im yesh bebayis harbe psuchim lechotzer. If you have many entrances to a home which are pasuach to a courtyard, in other words a backyard, a front yard, or the house has many entrances to or from the Rishus Harabim, and they are all, and we discussed this yesterday, right? If a house has, let's say, 4, in New York this is very common, a house will have 3 or 4 entrances, one in the front, one on either side, one in the back, right? So you have a house with multiple entrances. Kulam chayavim, all the entrances are chayiv. Afilu nismatu hadiyurim she'ein regilim ata lotzeis v'lavay ela be'echad mehem. Which means as follows. Let's stick with the example that we were using, right? You have a home, and the home has a front door, a door on either side, and a back door, right? So the husband, he comes home from work every day, he pulls into the driveway, so he enters through the door on the side of the house, right? The kid comes home from school every day with the neighbor who lives behind them and goes through the backyards and comes in through the back door. The wife, she doesn't have a car, so she walks, to the kid to school or whatever it may be, and she comes back home and walks in through the front door. The other kid gets off the bus a little bit further down the block, so they come in through the other door. So you have different family members which primarily make use of different doors. And then 1 or 2 kids get married, and all of a sudden, right, or they go away to yeshiva or to seminary, and all of a sudden those doors, which used to be used every day, are no longer used, right? So do those doors now become pater? So the halacha says that no, that even though they are no longer in use, they're still going to be chayev. That's Yud Zayin. Yud Ches says, a house that has many entrances, even though only 1 or 2 are used, chayev lasis mezuzah b'kol Pesach u'Pesach. Now, this seems to be a stira to what, in other words, these 2 seifim which follow Yud Ches on the heels of Yud Zayin, Yud Ches seems to be soiser what it says in Yud Zayin, because Yud Zayin is talking about a case where nismatu hadiyurim is mashma, that if from the beginning 1 or 2 of the doors were not used, they wouldn't be chayiv. They're only chayiv because usage went down. Whereas in halacha Yud Ches seems to be a stira. It seems to say that even if from the beginning you only used 1 or 2 doors, it would be pater. So what's the pshat? What's going on over here? So we'll mention 2 pshatim, I think. The Gedulei Hektish understands that in Sif Yud Zayin it's talking about nismatu hadiyurim, right? Where you used to have, like the case that the way I explained it, you used to have a number of residents who used all the doors, and now there's less. Whereas Sif Yud Ches is talking about that even if in the beginning, right, af im mitchila lo hayu regilan ela bechad, so there's still going to be chayev. In other words, there's different, the cases are different. One is talking about nismatu adiyurim, whereas the other one is talking about even if from the beginning they were only ragil bechad. Rav Moshe Feinstein, he says that Sif Yud Zayin is, he gives a totally different pshat. He says that Sif Yud Zayin is talking, okay, let's do it this way. Rav Moshe says that what it means is that Sif Yud Zayin is talking about where all the psachim are pasuach to mokem echad, right? Now let's read it again. Im yesh b'bayis harbe psachim, psuchim lechotzer. So all the psachim are pasuach to the chotzer. So in that case, since they're all made for knisa and yitzia, so they're all chayev, even if nismatu hadiyurim she'en regilin ata latzis v'lav yela be'echad mehen, nonetheless they're all going to be chayev, right? So you have and as an example of this would be here in Eretz Yisrael, at least. Let's say you have a person who buys 2 apartments on the same floor and connects them. So he still has 2 front doors. So you have 2 front doors to the person's house from the chutzner. The stairwell is the chutzner. So that's where Moshe says is Sif Katan Yud Zayin, is Sif Yud Zayin. And in that case, since each one is made for Knisa and Yitziyah, so each one is going to be Chayev. Whereas in Sif Yud Ches, it's talking about Bayis Sheyesh Le Psachim Harbe, meaning to 2 different places, right? In other words, one is to the chutzner and one is to somewhere else. So then, Afal Pisha Niraga Latzis Velavei Ela Be'echad Mehem Chayev Lasis Mezuzah Bechol Pesach or Pesach. That's Rav Moshe explains it. It's talking about 2 totally different cases. Says there Ramah, Hayel V'Nasil Knisa V'Yitziyah. Now, new case. Martev Sheyesh Le Pesach Min Harachayiv. If you have a basement, a cellar, which has an entrance from the street, Shemachnisim Ba Yayin you bring in wine. In other words, a person gets his wine deliveries from the street, and he has a cellar that the wine is brought into, and he has a large door that the wine is brought into. But from the house to the cellar, he has a little teeny tiny door. Okay, so again, from the street, he has a large door that the wine barrels are brought in, but when he wants to go from his house to the cellar, he has a little door that he goes through. So, im ha-pesach ha-katan rayim le-mezuzah, if the little door, it's little, but it's a door, right? In other words, it's 10 tefachim high, it's 4 tefachim wide, it's a door. It's a little door, but it's a door. So then, hi chayeves, the little door would be chayev, v'hagdela ptura, and the large door would be pater. Why is the large door pater? The large door is pater because it's not made for knisa v'yitziyah really. The only reason you have the large door is for bringing in the wine. So that's not called a place that's made for knisa and yitziyah. That's just a not for diurin purposes, right? Deliveries, right? And rare deliveries. Not like he has deliveries coming every day. You know, once every 2-3 months he gets a delivery of wine. So that's not called a knisa to his home. However, v'im ein hakotan roy le-mezuzah, but if the little door is mamish just like a dog, you know, entrance, it's a little tiny thing that he has to crawl under to get into. It's less than 10 tefachim high and less than 4 tefachim wide. So then hagdela chayeves v'hakotan poter. Then the large, you know, garage door, you know, to where they bring in the barrels, that would be chayev, and the small door, that would be poter, because the small door has no chiyuv mezuzah. It's too small. It's not the correct size, and the large door by default now becomes considered to be an entrance. Sif Yud Tes. Sif Yud Tes, so as many of you are probably familiar, there's also a tremendous discussion in the Paiskim about whether an elevator requires a mezuzah. So Sif Yud Tes is really the sif that the whole elevator sugya revolves around. Where in Shulchan Aruch would you find a case of an elevator? So Sif Yud Tes that we're about to see is the closest thing you have. So Aruba Shabein Bayis La Aliyah. So what's an Aruba? An Aruba is, you're all familiar, most likely, with the firehouses, right? We all have this image of the firemen sliding down the pole through a hole in the floor, right? So that's an Aruba, right? An Aruba is a hole in the floor, which is bein bayis la'aliyah. It's between the upstairs and the downstairs. Va'olim la besulam. But instead of a pole that you slide down, there's a permanent ladder that's there, and you climb up through the hole. So va'olim la besulam. Now, va'osim saviv hasulam hekef mechitzas. Pa'amim lamata biragle hasulam upa'amim lamala birayshay, which means as follows. Let's say you have a home, right? And you have this aruba, you have a hole in the floor to the second floor. You want to go up to the second floor of your home, so you climb up the ladder to get up to the second floor. Now the ladder takes you, obviously not just, well, it doesn't make a difference really, but the ladder takes you up to the second floor. Now on the second floor is let's say the bedrooms, right? So people need privacy. You don't want to just be there. right? So what they do is, around the hole on the upper floor, there's mechitzas. So you're not walking just straight into the upstairs. You're in a confined area, right? Or the same thing could be at the bottom of the ladder, right? That you open a door and you walk into a confined area, and then you go up the ladder. Now, so that there's privacy surrounding the ladder, which really is exactly what an elevator is nowadays, right? You walk into the elevator, the door's closed. You're surrounded by four walls. So that's what he's describing. You go up or down the ladder, and when you reach the bottom or when you reach the top, or both, you are surrounded by four walls. Again, we'll read it again. You are surrounded by four walls at the top or the bottom of the ladder. Pamim lamata, sometimes at the bottom of the ladder, biragle hasulam, upamim lamala, birayshay. V'yesh b'tzuras pesach, b'makam sha'isen aisay. Right? And there's a door where you're surrounded by four walls. I want to now step out to the first floor or step out to the second floor, so I open the door. Right? Mamish exactly like an elevator. Chayev. So this door is going to be chayev. Why? So that's a big machlokes regarding an elevator. If you are chayev in a mezuzah in an elevator, well, first of all, why is an elevator different in this case? So some say that the reason why an elevator is different in this case is because the elevator moves. Now, as the ladder in discussion over here doesn't move, whereas the elevator does move. So that's one reason why they say it's different. This I think the B'tzel HaChachma has 6 shuvas about the shaila of an elevator. It's a big discussion, but this halacha, by the way, is also a raya to the Chemudah Daniel that we mentioned yesterday, where the Chemudah Daniel says that a beishar that's less than dalet al dalet is chayiv, right? Because it functions perfectly well without the dalet al dalet. So over here, it doesn't speak it out lahedya, but the pashtus is that when you surround this ladder with four walls, it's not an area that's chayiv al dalet. It's not an area that's dalet al dalet large. It's just like the size of an elevator, more or less. And nonetheless, he's saying that it's chayiv. Rav Moshe Feinstein or Nizam Kirelitz even say that on a beis shar that's less than dalet al dalet, you can make a bracha, right? So over here, I'm just mentioning that the derech agav. Be that as it may, so over here it says that this door at the top or the bottom of the ladder would be chayiv. V'im asu lamala v'gam lamata chayiv b'shtayim. So if on the first floor and the second floor you have this shaft that has a door, you would be chayiv on both. The Minchas Yitzchak, by the way, says by the elevator that it's the actual elevator car that's, in Hebrew, it's the ta of the elevator that's chayiv. But he's the only one who holds that way. Rabbi Yashiv and Rav Vosner and Rav Nissim Kirelitz, they say, like you said, that the frame at the entrance to the floor, that's the one that's chayiv. But the elevator car is not chayiv.
Skyscraper, according to Minchas Yitzchak, you only one mezuzah.
Correct. In my building over here, we did like the Minchas Yitzchak, and it's a 5-story building. There's only one mezuzah on the car. I once met Rav David Feinstein at a chasana, and I asked him if you should do like the Minchas Yitzchak. Well, first I asked him if an elevator is chayiv. Now, it was kind of a trick question because Rav Moshe holds that an elevator is potter. So I just wanted to see what he would say, and he said that an elevator is chayiv, not like Rav Moshe. So I asked, actually, it's not meduyak. He said, well, if it's dalet al dalet, it's certainly chayiv. That's what he said. So I asked him, where would it be chayiv? Would it be chayiv like the Minchas Yitzchak on the car of the elevator or on the frame? And he said, both sparas have merit. So I said, if the yeshiva was putting up a mezuzah in such a building, where would the yeshiva put it? So he said, I would put it on the frame of the floor. But again, he reiterated that he didn't disagree with the Minchas Yitzchak svara. Okay, I'm sorry. There is a tzad to put it on both, because even though knows the Yavitz and the Binyan Tzion, they say that when you have a suffix, which side, we was talking yesterday about which side to put the mezuzah on, so they say to put on 2 mezuzahs, one on either side. And there are those that argue with them, Lamaisa, we're not knowing that way. But over here, you're not putting it on 2 different sides, you're actually putting it on the same side, but you're putting it on 2 different doorways. So, l'chayra, over here, there would not be a problem to do that, especially on all floors other than the entrance level. Because on all In other words, according to Rabbi Yashiv, and I think this, Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman held that an elevator are potter. So I think most elevators don't have a mezuzah. Steipler held it's potter. Tzela Chachma holds it's potter. I think most elevators don't have mezuzahs. But in a building where the there's a lot of reasons why it's potter. A lot of reasons why it's potter. One is because it's moving, another because it's unusable in between, and whatever. So that's a whole arichas why it's potter. But many poskim hold it's potter. But from the ones that hold it's chayev, most people are noyeg like Rebbe Yashiv that on the entrance level to the building they'll put the mezuzah on the right side going into the elevator. And then on the 5th floor where they live, they'll put it on the right side exiting the elevator. Because the elevator is a beishar to Yadira, right? So if I live on the 5th floor, the 4th floor, the 3rd floor, so I'm entering the beishar on Komak Nisa, I go up to the 3rd floor, and now I'm going to my diras. I need a mezuzah on the right side going in, and on the left side coming out. That's what Rabbi Yashiv holds, and I think that's the minig of most people who put up a mezuzah. So if imkain, so on, according to the Minchas Yitzchak, you only need one mezuzah on the right side going in up to the car. But when you're exiting, right, according to Minchas Yitzchak, you're potter. So you'd only be putting up on the exit because of Rebbe Yashiv. So that you could put on the frame like Rebbe Yashiv, and l'chayr would not be a tarti desasri. So you could put up one on the right side, like the Minchas Yitzchak going in on the car, and one on the right side exiting, like Rebbe Yashiv. So you would be on the 3rd floor, and you'd have 2 mezuzahs in front of your face, but l'chayr that would be okay.
One that's moving on the elevator, and one that's fixed on the floor.
Yeah. But again, all this is only according to those that hold that it's chayiv.
But Moshe himself said you make a bracha on the beishar, but the elevator itself is potter.
Correct.
Even though you use this as an arayah for the
correct
Daniel for beishar.
Correct. Rav Moshe holds like the Chemud Daniel that a beishar pachas midalet al dalet is chayiv, but he disagrees with the Minchas Yitzchak, who says that the elevator has the din of a beishar, and Rav Moshe holds the elevator is potter completely. But if you have, I'll tell you where it would be negea. Again, I grew up in Flatbush. Most homes in Flatbush are like this. You walk into the home, you're in a little coat room, which is less than dalet al dalet. You take off your jacket or your coat, you hang it up, and there's a door, and then you walk into the house. So that little coat room, which is less than dalet al dalet, according to Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Nizim Kirelitz, you could put up a mezuzah with a bracha. Put up a mezuzah with a bracha. Now, even though the front door of the house really is not, you're not entering the house, you're entering just a little coat room that's pachas midalet al dalet. So there's a tzad to say that the front door of the home would be potter, right? Which some poskim do say.
But if you have one door within another door, and it's less than dalet amos each time, you don't put mezuzah on each suras HaPesach there?
You do, but only because of a beishar. So if you hold that a beishar pachas midalet al dalet is potter, not like the Chemud Daniel, then your front door of your home would be potter. If you hold that there's a p'tur of pachas midalet al dalet, then no. Even the sha'arim would have dinim, and dalet al dalet is one of those dinim. But again, the Rav Moshe and Rav Nisim, they hold like the Chemud Daniel that pachas midalet al dalet would be chayev with a bracha. I think Rav Shlomo Kluger holds that it's potter. Period. Not only is it not chayev with a bracha, many poskim will say it's chayev without a bracha. There are those that hold that it's potter. So the front door of a home in Brooklyn and Flatbush would be potter. Chaf Aleph. Pesach echad v'chalku ba'amid beintain. Now this is a Chuvas Harashba, and this halacha as well. Sorry, I skipped Chaf. Let's go back to Chaf. Oh, yeah, I sure did skip Chaf. Okay. Sif Chaf. Pesach she'achari hadeles and yesh le patzim tefach chayev b'mezuzah. So there are, I think, 6 or 7 pshatim, once again, in the Rishonim and Achronim explaining Sif Chaf. So I made a diagram here of 2 of those explanations. But just to try and give it to you verbally before we begin, the idea is that you have a Pesach that's in the corner. You know, there's a typical door to a typical area is not in the corner of the room. Right? It's not in the southeastern corner, right, or the northwestern corner. It's usually in the middle of a wall. So this case is talking where you have a Pesach at the corner, and it actually enters 2 rooms, as we'll see in the diagram. Here's the diagram, right? So these are two of the 5 or 6 different pshatim in what the pshat is. So over here, in this case, right, according to this shita, you can enter from the south or you can enter from the west, and there is a post in the corner, right? So that's so now. So according to this shita, if this post is less than a tefach thick, you could technically put a mezuzah over here, and you're pattering both entrances. Okay, that's this pshat. In other words, again, you have an entrance from the west, you have an entrance from the south. So if you would put on the southern door a mezuzah on the right post, you patter the southern entrance and the western entrance. That's one pshat. Another pshat is that you enter from the south and you have a room to the right. In other words, this is the home, right? And the home is configured that you have, let's say, your study as soon as you walk into the house on the right, okay? So this post that I circled essentially is the right post of 2 different rooms, okay? So according to this pshat, this right post, you could technically, when you're entering the home, if you have a mezuzah on the right post, that mezuzah could theoretically pater the room on the right as well.
As long as the post
is less than a tefach thick. Right. Now, if the post is thicker than a tefach, then you would need 2 mezuzahs. You'd need one on your right as you're entering the home, and one on the same post on your right as you're entering the study.
Where is the thickness met? What if it's a 2x4? I mean, what if it's narrow on one side and it's...
So that's a very good question. I'm not 100% sure about that. That's a good question. But be that as it may, again, so this is the idea that this sif is talking about, that you have either one mezuzah that could patter 2 rooms, or one mezuzah that could patter 2 doorways. Okay, and again, there are many other pshatim in the Rishonim, but that's that'll suffice for us. So Pesach she'achay, so that's called Pesach she'achay hadelas, a Pesach which is behind the door, because in either one of these cases, technically, when you open the door, you may not see the mezuzah, right? In other words, because it's in the other doorway. Right, especially in the case with the one post and the 2 doorways. So Pesach she'acharei hadelas im yesh lo patzim tefach chayev b'mezuzah, meaning a second mezuzah, right? Whereas if the post is less than a tefach, thick or wide or deep, so then one mezuzah would suffice for the 2 areas. Sif Chav Aleph is also a very controversial case. Sif Chaf Aleph again. So Sif Chaf Aleph is a like I said, it's a Chuvas Rashba, and it's very unclear how to read the Rashba and how to read the Mechaber even over here that we're about to see. There are different ways to understand this. There's a Chachmas Adam that has his pshat. There are many other pshatim. So we'll try and just deal with it as best as we can. Pesach echad v'cholka ba'amud bein tayim. So we're all familiar with this case. This case is where you have a relatively wide doorway. You have this at the entrance of many shuls, many batei medrash, and even nice homes. It's very common to find such a thing, that you have a nice wide doorway which has a post in the middle and 2 doors. Right? You have 2 doors. In the saloons, right? In the 1880s, right? The cowboys would walk into the saloons and they would knock open the 2 doors which would swing open. But in those doors, there's no post in the middle, right? But if you have, sometimes in a restaurant, you'll have swinging doors also with a post in the middle. But I think it's most common. I mean, it's very common today in homes. Many people have sent me pictures of their house where they have this as well. But I think it's most common in shuls, yeshivas, and batei medrash, where you have a large door and there's 2 doors with a post in the middle. So that's Pesach Echad. V'cholka, you have 1 doorway which is split ba'amud bein tayim by a post in the center. So do you need, and you have two doors, right? I'm making that assumption. The Chayei Adam says maybe you have 1 door, but let's say you have 2 doors. So does each doorway require its own mezuzah, Well, no, I view it as one large doorway. It's just for structural purposes, I can't have a door that's 6 feet wide. So I have a post in the middle, but essentially it's really just one doorway. Or do we say no, that each doorway is its own doorway and you need 2 mezuzahs and not 1 mezuzah? So these are the tricky words over here. Kol sheyesh, I'll read it according to the simple understanding of the Mechaber, which is not universally agreed upon. But the simple understanding is Kol sheyesh heker tzir bezeh ubezeh litzad ha'amud, as long as there are hinges on the post to the right and the left. Notice I kept on saying the doors swing like this. If the doors swing like this, there's no hinges on the post because the post is in the center, right? But if the doors swing like that, right, that there's hinges on the post, so then hareihem kishnei psachim. Then it's considered like 2 doorways. V'tzarech mezuzah l'kol pesach, and each doorway requires its own mezuzah. Aval kol she'ein tzirim letzad ha'amud, but if the hinges are on the outside, but like my example I was giving, but the hinges are not on the post itself, so then ein ha'amud mechalkai, then the post does not split it into 2, she'enai ela l'nai ba'alma, because since the post is not being used to put hinges on it, and the doors open like this, so that means that the post is just there for Noi Ba'alma. It's not there for any real reason. Maybe even just structurally it's there, but it's not serving any function. Since the post is not serving any function, so you only need 1 mezuzah on the extreme right. Whereas if the hinges would be on the post itself, so then the post is serving a function, and that splits it into 2 doorways, and that's what it would be chayiv.
How wide can the post be?
So from here it sounds like it doesn't make a difference how wide the post is.
Still, if it's 3 tefachim, it's already a wall, no?
Oh yeah, that yes, ein chanami. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't chap the oimek of the question. Yes, if the post in the center of the 2 doors, I would tend to agree. If it's more than 3 tefachim, then for sure that splits it into 2 doorways. Whereas if it's just, let's say, so some say that if it's more than a tefach wide, that already automatically makes it 2 doorways. Others disagree and say, no, the Mechaber doesn't say anything about a tefach. Now, as you say, at a certain point, it's not logical to say that it's 1 door anymore. So what's that point? Is that 1 tefach or is that 3 tefachim? But that's a shaila. But I will point out, we have 16 seconds left, that others read this Mechaber differently, and they say that as long as there's hinges on either side of the post anywhere, that splits it into 2.